The Galactic Convergence. Hub floated in geosynchronous orbit above Veltrax. 3. A jewel of neutral ground wrapped in shimmering blue mist and perpetual ceremony. The dome of the Council Assembly Chamber was a cathedral of light and sound. Holographic banners of every known empire drifted weightlessly above polished obsidian floors, while 1,000 languages murmured across the air like a multilingual thunderstorm. They had gathered here to discuss the matter of Earth. Again, it's a waste of our precious cycles, hissed Sarvik of the Vorthari Dominion, a scaled mass of green armor and flicking tongue. Letting primitives crash our council is an insult to every sovereign empire in this chamber. Across from him, Ambassador Yalan of the Ithkari adjusted her crystalline shawl with careful grace. You mistake rapid evolution for primitiveness, Sarvik. In 2 of their revolutions, humans went from combustion engines to orbital stations. Sarvik spat, literally, onto the floor. A cleaning drone zipped by, unimpressed. And now they roll in here with smoke and song, begging for council rights with dirt-fuel machines and smiles like blades. They bring nothing but noise. From his floating hydropod near the center dais, Chief Archivist Vilexu of the Fonmer Council cleared his blubbery throat. Regardless of personal bias, the human envoy is scheduled to address the council today. At that precise moment, the chamber doors parted. There was no fanfare, no procession of armed guards or sacred drums. Just a simple trio of bipeds striding confidently into the room like they owned it. And perhaps that was the first sign. The one in the center was tall, blonde, wearing a blue-gray suit tailored to the edge of military precision. He wore a black tie with a pin shaped like Earth, a ball of oceans and arrogance. He smiled as if the entire universe had told a joke only he got. "Good morning," he said cheerfully, his accent American, Midwestern even. "I hope we're not late. The traffic outside your wormhole gate is just dreadful." Silence. Cold, clawed, gelatinous silence. He tapped his badge. Commander Matthew Hodge, representing the United Human Territories. "These are my diplomatic officers, Ellis and Julian. They mostly keep me from saying dumb things. No promises, though." He winked. Someone in the audience gasped. Sarvik made a sound like someone chewing glass. "You arrive with no ceremonial respect, no gift of peace, and yet you claim this sacred floor as equals?" Matthew raised a single finger. "Actually, we did bring gifts." He snapped, and Julian handed out small paper boxes. "These are cheeseburgers, made with simulated beef, ethically sourced. No actual cows were harmed. Mostly." Some delegates leaned away, suspicious. Others sniffed with intrigue. A gelatinous ambassador from the Wetrix Consortium absorbed one entirely and wept. "You mock us with food?" Sarvik growled. "Mock you?" Matthew blinked innocently. "No, sir. We feed our friends. You'd know if we were mocking you. We do it with style." The Ithkari laughed softly into her sleeve. "Enough," bubbled Vilexu. "You are here, Commander Hodge, to answer questions regarding your application to full council status. You will submit to this chamber's protocols." "Of course." Matthew sat calmly, legs crossed. "Ask away." A wall panel glowed. Data streamed across the room. A chorus of synthesized voices chanted, "Earth technological status, unverified. Military classification, unknown. Strategic relevance, undetermined." The Dralix delegate, a four-armed brute sheathed in red exo-armor, stood. "You claim to be peaceful, yet your history is soaked in blood. Every century, new weapons. Every war, more death. And now you bring tanks." Matthew shrugged. "We also brought cookies, but your customs officer confiscated them." Ellis leaned over. "Sir, he's referring to the. "Oh, those tanks," Matthew said with a knowing grin. "Yes. M1 Abrams. Old tech, by our standards. Thought they'd make a nice gesture." "A gesture?" Dralix roared. "Symbolic, of course," Matthew replied smoothly. "You folks brought dreadnoughts, right? We brought something from home. A conversation starter." The Fonmer data scribes buzzed with confusion. "Our scans indicate Earth weaponry is kinetic, high-caliber, combustion-based. Inefficient and crude." And yet, Julian said, voice calm, effective. A quiet rumble echoed through the chamber, barely perceptible, like thunder deep underground. Yalen's head turned sharply. What was that? Matthew chuckled. Oh, that? Probably nothing. Could be our boys parking the parade floats. A shadow passed over the translucent dome. Delegates peered up. A single, massive outline slid over the glass. Treads. Armor. A cannon like a steel fist. It moved with glacial calm. Too calm. Matthew followed their gaze. We brought 6. Technically 12. For our invisible. Well, not to you. Your sensors are, let's just say, vintage. Sarvik hissed. That violates the planetary demilitarization accords. Oh, we read that, Matthew said. We even brought our own lawyers. Turns out, the accords don't specify whether tanks count as infantry-grade mechanized units if they have diplomatic flags on the side. Loopholes are such fun. An uproar began, delegates yelling, translating, arguing. Through it all, Matthew sat still, calm, smiling. Yalen stood. Commander Hodge, with respect, what exactly is your intent in deploying armored units on council grounds? Matthew's face didn't shift. Our intent? Why, madam, we're here to talk. Same as all of you. Another low rumble. This time closer. The chamber lights flickered. Vilexu bellowed, if this is intimidation. It's reassurance, Matthew said gently. See, Earth has learned a few things over the millennia. Chief among them, if you want peace, be ready to show what happens when it's broken. He stood, straightened his suit, walked slowly to the center dais. The galaxy watched us evolve. You mocked our chaos, our clumsy limbs, our warlike history. But let me ask you a question. Silence fell again. The dome overhead hummed. How many of you, he asked softly, would declare war on a species that invented both nuclear fusion and barbecue sauce in the same century? Half laughter. Nervous. The other half didn't laugh at all. Here's the truth, Matthew continued. We came to join your council. We like to play nice, share culture, explore the stars. And we're very good at nice. He leaned forward slightly. But we're better at war. Every alien felt it. That subtle shift. Not a threat. Not a boast. A statement of fact. We brought tanks because we don't trust easily. And because history tells us not to. He looked at the Vorthri. You dissected our astronauts when they drifted into your borders. He turned to the Dralics. You tried to hack our satellites. They hacked you back. You still think that was a solar flare. He gestured to the ceiling. And now our tanks sit outside, engines warm, not because we want to fight, but because we plan ahead. Julian stepped forward. You asked us to speak at the table. You should know, we don't sit without scanning the exits. Another tank rolled across the ceiling glass. The cannon pivoted. Not aiming, just looking. Final question, Matthew said, hands behind his back. If peace is your goal, what's wrong with bringing protection? The Vorthri growled. If you seek council approval, disarm immediately. Oh, that's not up to me, Matthew replied. Our tanks have autonomy. A beat. Then they respond to mood shifts. The chamber fell still. We train our machines to be like us, he said softly. To be patient, strategic. But if they sense hostility, well, let's not test that theory. Yalen whispered. What game are you playing, human? No game, Ambassador, Matthew said, smiling again. We just brought toys to show and tell. As murmurs rose again, another tremor passed underfoot, deeper this time, like the heartbeat of the Earth itself. Up in orbit, a satellite blinked a red light. A message transmitted to every council ship. Unregistered mobile units deploying in stealth formation. Tactical patterns match Terran armored strategy. Recommend immediate planetary lockdown. And Matthew, never breaking eye contact with anyone, simply said, let's talk peace. Before the ground starts shaking for real. The surface of Veltrax, 3 miles below the floating Galactic convergence hub, was not designed for war. It was lush and ceremonial, polished with imported crystalline tiles and rows of holographic banners that shimmered in honor of galactic unity. Nothing beneath the soil groaned with iron. No trenches scarred its pristine fields. It was a monument to the idea of diplomacy, a place where teeth were never meant to show. That made the rumbling all the more unnatural. From orbit, the human diplomatic cruiser, UHT Crescent Dagger, maintained its serene position. Its communications remained polite. But on the planet's surface, 6 objects had disembarked via rapid drop pod. Each left a deep impact crater in the ground. Each rose with a metallic groan. And each bore the letters M1A2SEP-V4 on its armored flank, painted in soot black against sun-glinting tan plating. They weren't parading. They were waiting. One sat idling outside the eastern energy shield of the Council's outer perimeter. Another parked itself, without invitation, within 60 meters of the Dralic's consulate building. Their main guns didn't track targets. They didn't need to. Their existence was enough. In the command hall, still thick with tension from Matthew's arrival, a new kind of silence took hold. The kind where even anger dare not rise too loudly. The Ithkari ambassador was the first to break it. "I don't believe they're here to fight," she said softly, reading from a pad. "Not yet. Their engines remain on low cycle. Hatches sealed. No ground troops deployed." "They don't need troops," growled Sarvik, his eyes locked on the ceiling. Another M1 rolled across the transparent dome, as if patrolling the very sky. "That's not a vehicle. That's a statement." Commander Matthew Hodge stood at the center dais, hands still folded behind his back. He had not raised his voice once. He had not even stepped toward aggression. And yet the temperature in the room had dropped. "Council members," he said, with that same disarming charm, "we deployed the Abrams units for transparency. We figured you'd prefer to see our capabilities rather than be surprised by them." Dralix snarled from his quadrant. That was a veiled threat. Matthew tilted his head. "If it were a threat, Dralix, you wouldn't still be shouting. You'd be running." A flicker in the lights above. The council chamber's primary power grid drew energy from planetary relays. The M1 units weren't connected to any of it, yet the lights flickered all the same, as if something massive and unwelcome had entered the planetary rhythm. Julian, the human aide, stepped forward. "The M1 Abrams is a relic of our surface warfare days. You might consider it outdated. Some of you might mock it." She tapped her own device, pulling up a live stream. The feed switched to the southern plains. There, one of the M1 tanks faced off against an alien war mech, courtesy of the Dralaxia militia, no doubt eager to demonstrate superiority. The mech was twice as tall, bristling with plasma cannons and sensor nodes. In a blur of motion, the M1 fired once. Just once. The alien mech folded in half. Smoke coiled into the air like a signature. The council chamber froze. "Old," Julian said, "does not mean ineffective. Earth doesn't discard what works. We improve it, reinforce it, make it mean something more." Ellis added, "You see a tank. We see a history lesson with treads." Matthew smiled. "And we're excellent students of history." A sharp noise broke across the room, a ping from the Fonmer emergency sensor hub. The aquatic beings flailed as they read the data aloud. "Multiple planetary defense systems have been pinged. Unregistered frequencies match Terran strategic deployment grids." Vilexu, voice bubbling in distress, gurgled, "You're not just here. You're everywhere." Matthew raised a brow. "Not everywhere. That would be rude. We've simply positioned ourselves to respond in case negotiations turn hostile." "You call this diplomacy?" Yalin asked, quietly horrified. "I call it prevention," Matthew replied. "On Earth we have an old phrase, speak softly and carry a big stick." He gestured to the dome above. "We brought 6. A flashing red alert now blinked across half the room's consoles. "Unauthorized Terran units detected near Council World Satellite Nexus. Energy readings, NON plasma. Combustion-based kinetics. Unknown strategic intention." The Fonmer scrambled to lock their communications. The Dralics began shouting over one another. The Vorthri were already halfway through drafting a war declaration, and Matthew just watched it all unfold, as if observing a middle school play. "We understand this is shocking," he said finally. So let me be clear. We're not here to conquer. We're not here to intimidate. We're here to offer something. Dralix hissed, what could you possibly offer beyond carnage? Balance, Matthew said. The word landed hard. Every empire in this room has, at some point, weaponized superiority, dominated lesser species, forced compliance through fear. He looked around, eyes serious now. We're not saints. Earth has done the same. But we learned the cost. We learned what happens when power goes unchecked. He tapped a command. The screen changed again. Historical footage now. Earth's great wars. Black and white grain of tanks rolling through Berlin. Desert sandstorms during Gulf War operations. Futuristic training footage in holographic facilities. Children pointing at a museum exhibit, an Abrams turret. Then it cut to now. The M1 parked silently outside the council hall. Its barrel aimed not at any target, but just near enough to remind. You call us smiling apes, Matthew said. You're not wrong. But never forget, apes wield clubs, then spears, then rockets. And when the galaxy arrived, we smiled, because it meant the real game was finally beginning. Julian leaned into her mic. And this is just the opening move. Velixu croaked, what do you want? Matthew didn't smile this time. Everything we deserve. A seat, a vote, a voice, and a warning broadcast to every faction watching this moment. The human era has arrived. We didn't ask for permission. We showed up. Outside, one of the tanks powered down. Not because of diplomacy, but because it had proven its point. Back inside, Sarvik rose, fury in his breath. We will not kneel to Terran intimidation. Matthew looked at him like a parent staring down a tantrum-throwing child. Good, he said, because kneeling isn't required. Listening is. A low hum, another tremor. Something stirred beneath the floor, now, not just the tanks. Something else. A strange coded frequency spread through the air like static. Invisible to most species. Only the Ithkari recognized the sound. Yalan whispered, they're transmitting peace offers alongside threat maps. Matthew turned toward her. It's an old Terran technique. We call it the carrot and the stick. Usually, we let the other side choose. Velixu tried to collect his scattered notes. You cannot pressure a council vote under military presence. We can, Julian corrected. But we prefer not to. We hope diplomacy wins. Matthew sighed, adjusting his tie. Look, we could have rolled in with dreadnoughts, brought nukes, or worse, lawyers. That got a few stifled laughs. Even now. But we chose tanks. Because tanks say something simple. They say, we're here. We can endure. And we'll be damned before we kneel. Outside, a squad of council peace officers approached one of the tanks. The turret turned just enough to freeze them in place. No shots fired. But no steps taken forward either. Final offer, Matthew said. You vote. You decide. Give us a seat. Or give us a reason. Yalan studied him, unreadable. You built all this for this moment? Matthew smiled again, gently this time. No, Ambassador. We built all this because we knew this moment would come. Silence again. But this time, heavy with calculation. The Ithkari exchanged whispers. The Famr tapped their gelatinous comm nodes. The Dralix gritted their teeth. Then, without ceremony, a simple tone played from the council core terminal. Voting initiated. Matthew nodded once, calm. Julian tapped her pad. Transmission to Earth complete. Phase 2 ready pending authorization. Ellis leaned in. Sir, you think they'll vote yes? Doesn't matter, Matthew replied. We already showed them what happens when the ground trembles. Outside, the tanks didn't move. They didn't have to. Their job was already done. Under the low glow of Veltrax 3's artificial dawn, the Galactic Council chamber looked more like a courtroom awaiting sentencing than a diplomatic arena. A quiet drone filled the vast airspace above the floor, a sound somewhere between distant thunder and the purring of a very large, very patient machine. 6 M1 Abrams tanks, still stationed across the Council's planetary perimeter, hadn't moved an inch in over 2 hours. That was intentional. They didn't need to. They were monuments to the human mood now, calm, still, but impossibly heavy with the threat of sudden violence. Commander Matthew Hodge adjusted his suit cuff as if nothing in the galaxy was out of place. Now that we've properly established tone, he began, let's talk specifics. The alien factions had quieted, not out of surrender, but strategy. Matthew recognized the silence of enemies recalibrating. The Vorthri, always arrogant, sat coiled and motionless, eyes never leaving Matthew's posture. The Dralics tapped away on their war tablets, transmitting silent commands that Earth had already intercepted an hour ago. The Famr twitched anxiously in their biochambers, and the Ithkari, still watchful, still unflinching, simply waited. Matthew stepped toward the central projection dais. His shadow stretched long across the polished obsidian floor. A flick of his fingers, and a clean minimal list projected overhead. Earth's terms for full council integration, full voting rights and permanent council representation, unrestricted access to interstellar trade routes, the cessation of all covert surveillance programs targeting Earth, full amnesty for prior treaty violations by Terran nations, mutual defense recognition. Any attack on Earth is an attack on the council itself. A new clause in council law. Species autonomy in military design, regardless of technological paradigm. The last line struck like a hammer blow. Matthew didn't flinch. You want us to legalize planetary militarization, Sarvik spat, his forked tongue snapping with disdain. Matthew met his eyes. No. I want you to stop pretending that disarmament makes anyone safe. We both know it doesn't. Dralic stood. We'd be legitimizing ancient warcraft. Fossil-fueled monstrosities. It sets a galactic precedent. And yet, Julian interjected smoothly, our fossil-fueled monstrosities currently have orbital lockdown across 3 sectors, and not one of your high-frequency plasma ships has dared blink since they landed. Matthew gestured to the dome again. The tanks remained, silent, menacing, unmistakable. Consider it a design reminder. Not every weapon needs to glow blue to erase a target. Yalon's voice came softer, laced with concern rather than anger. Commander Hodge, I ask again, do you seek cooperation or control? Matthew tilted his head, almost wistful. Cooperation, always, but backed by clarity. And clarity, in our experience, tends to ride on treads. The room exhaled a collective breath. Matthew let it hang, then added, these demands aren't ultimatums. They're a statement of reality. Humanity has arrived. We can no longer be marginalized behind quarantine zones and outdated diplomatic tiers. Vilixu chimed in, his voice fluid and nervous. These terms imply you expect immediate integration. That is unprecedented. So is dropping tanks at your front door without a single shot fired, Julian said. Let's not pretend we're playing by old rules here. There was a long pause. Matthew broke it with a chuckle. A sound so casual it spun the chamber's tension like a knife. You know, he said, it's funny. Every race we've encountered so far has had the same reaction. They think we're unpredictable, violent, reckless. Ellis added, which, to be fair, we sometimes are. But they always miss the bigger picture, Matthew continued. We're strategic. Obsessively so. We calculate everything. It's just that, well, our calculus looks different. Yalon raised an eyebrow. Different how? Matthew leaned forward. We name our weapons after gods and demons. We train our soldiers in environments designed to break their minds. We test our diplomacy in rooms like this by smiling while setting the chessboard on fire. No one interrupted. Let me paint you a picture, Matthew said, voice dipping into something cold. The M1 Abrams tank is over 2 centuries old in basic design. We've updated it, sure. But its core concept remains massive, mobile, relentless. It doesn't need to cloak. It doesn't need to fly. It just kills. Efficiently. Consistently. And in our hands, it's not just a weapon. He tapped the dais again. A map lit up. Each tank on Veltrax. 3 now showed its internal AI module's mood signature. Their indicators read, calm, 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 neutral, observing, ready, Sarvik twitched. They are self-aware? Matthew smiled. Aware enough. We trained them with datasets from every major war in our history. Not just tactics. Psychology, ethics, emotion mimicry. They're designed to understand restraint better than any human commander ever did. Why? Yalin asked. Because restraint, Julian said, is the most terrifying power of all. Dralix slammed a fist against his console. You expect us to be impressed by ancient death engines and veiled threats. Matthew turned slowly toward him. No, I expect you to listen. Because the next generation of human diplomacy won't be powered by Abrams. It'll be faster, smarter. You're getting the polite version right now. He stepped off the dais and walked back to center. Calm, measured. And believe me, Dralix, no one's ever survived the impolite version. The chamber vibrated slightly as a distant thunder rolled through the walls. One of the alien delegates whispered, "Was that another tank?" "No," Ellis said. "That was them testing the new sound barrier." On cue, a feed displayed an Abrams launching into motion, crashing through alien terrain at speeds no tank had any right to achieve, crossing chasms with a boost-assisted jump, slamming into an old mock-mech with brutal simplicity. "Why are you showing us this?" asked Velixu, nearly trembling now. Matthew looked him in the eye. "Because I want you to understand one thing clearly before you vote. We brought these tanks not to scare you. We brought them to remind you that humanity never stopped preparing." Another feed appeared. This time, Earth. A military hangar. Hundreds more M1s lined up, each under construction, each upgraded with advanced tech and ancient rage. "The tanks outside are just our handshake," Matthew said. "Imagine what our clenched fist looks like." Silence. Then Yalin, voice steady despite the tension, said, "Let's say, hypothetically, we accept your terms. What comes next?" Matthew didn't answer right away. He looked around the room, taking in every representative's face, every subtle expression of fear, calculation, and resistance. Then he said, "We shake hands. We draft a better future. We sit down and fix the messes the older empires made. Together." He paused, voice dropping lower. "But if you reject it, then Earth stops pretending this council was ever about peace." No one spoke. Outside, the tanks began to rotate their turrets, synchronized. Not aiming, just reminding. A final tone echoed through the chamber. Council vote in final phase. Decision imminent. Sarvik hissed. "If we vote no, what happens?" Matthew turned. "The question isn't what happens if you say no. The question is, what happens if you hesitate?" Yalin folded her hands together, eyes locked on Matthew. "And what happens if we say yes?" Matthew smiled again. "Then we bring coffee to the next meeting." The chamber lit with the pulse of voting nodes activating. Lights blinked. Data streamed. Worlds debated. Empires hesitated. And Earth waited. The chamber lights dimmed as the final voting cycle commenced. Holographic symbols danced in the air, each representing a council member species, flickering as votes registered. Silence gripped the room, broken only by the faint hum of neural uplinks and the ambient growl of the M1 Abrams tanks idling outside. The Galactic Convergence Hub, designed for unity, had never been more divided. Commander Matthew Hodge stood with his arms loosely behind his back, the picture of calm. Not smug, not hostile, just patient, like someone who had already calculated all possible outcomes and found every one of them acceptable. At his side, Julian and Ellis monitored encrypted comms. Earth's orbital command confirmed no mobilization from any alien fleet. Not one ship had fired. Not one cannon had spun. Every empire, from the smallest vassal state to the overconfident Vorthari, had frozen. All because of 6 tanks. Matthew didn't need to check the feed. He could feel it in the air. Fear, yes, but more than that. Recognition. The Ithkari's vote was the first to lock in. Yes. Seconds later, the Fonmer added theirs. The gelatinous scholars had never waged war in their aquatic history, but even they recognized the art of a warning dressed in politeness. Yes. Then came smaller factions. The solar trade colonies. The drifter cultures. even the diplomatic factions that once called Earth a feral culture wrapped in steel. All now watch the footage of Abrams tanks leveling 1,000-ton warbots with ease, of humans deploying them like chess pawns with nuclear hearts. The vote counter rose steadily, until only 3 remained: the Dralics, the Vorthri, and the Katsuan Enclave, a race of floating, hive-minded creatures that had never spoken directly to humans before. The vote was stalled not by uncertainty, but by resistance. "They're holding out," Julian murmured, eyes scanning the tactical overlay. Ellis nodded. "Dralics have 15 planetary outposts near Earth trade lanes. They're calculating cost versus pride." "And the Vorthri?" Julian asked. Matthew smiled faintly. "They're too arrogant to back down, but they're also too afraid to test the alternative." Below them, one of the M1s shifted just slightly. A twitch. A mechanical breath. The Dralic's console blinked. "Yes." Julian exhaled. "One down." The Katsuan were next. As a hive species, their votes required internal alignment, a task made harder by emotional flux. But Earth had accounted for that too. Just 3 minutes earlier, Orbital Command had accidentally leaked a full dossier on the Abrams AI logic system, translated for all species to digest. The Katsuan, lovers of symmetry, saw the pattern immediately. These machines weren't built to dominate. They were built to warn. Yes. Only the Vorthri remained. Sarvik stood slowly, his thick tail slithering against the metal floor with a grating rasp. His black pupils, vertical and cold, stared directly at Matthew. "We do not respond to intimidation," he hissed. Matthew nodded. "Neither do we. You deploy relics of metal and combustion as if they are gods. We know their limits." Matthew took one step forward. "No, you don't." Sarvik's voice rose. "You demand entry into our council, our legacy, backed by nothing but ancient war machines and clever words. Where is your merit, human?" Matthew paused, tilted his head. "Our merit," he echoed, voice soft now. "You watched us from orbit for 300 years. You saw our wars, our failures, our endless hunger. But you missed the most important part." He turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. "You saw our violence. You never saw our restraint." He paced now, measured steps echoing through the chamber. "When alien probes dissected our soldiers, we didn't retaliate. When your trade fleet stole from our orbital farms, we didn't attack. When your diplomats laughed in our faces, we didn't strike." He stopped, looked over his shoulder. "We waited." Sarvik hissed again. "Waited for what?" Matthew turned to face him. "For this." The chamber's central screen shifted. New footage, decrypted and broadcast live, now played from 6 alien worlds, each one receiving a personal visit from a ceremonial Abrams tank. They weren't firing. They weren't even moving. But they had parked themselves in sacred places. One outside the Vorthri War Monument, another within walking distance of a Katsuan hive temple, a third beside a Dralaxian military academy, its cannon pointed squarely at the barracks. Matthew spoke softly. "We didn't come to play your game. We came to change it." Still, the Vorthri vote remained uncast, until the final tank made its move. On Veltrax 3 itself, the M1 outside the council dome slowly turned its main turret. The whine of its engine roared like a mechanical lion. The barrel tilted, not toward the chamber, but up toward the stars. It was aiming at a Vorthri orbital command satellite. Sarvik's console blinked. An Earth transmission came through. A single sentence. "Target lock acquired. Final vote requested." Matthew didn't say a word. The chamber waited. Then, at last, "Yes." The vote tally blinked green. Unanimous. A tone echoed across the dome, a warble, ancient and ceremonial. Full council status granted. No further objections. Matthew stepped back from the dais. No cheers. No celebration. Just silence. Then Julian said what everyone was thinking. "It's done." The Fonmer floated nervously. "Your tanks, will you remove them?" Matthew nodded. "Of course. They were never here to stay. Only to say hello." Ellis tapped her pad. "Order sent." Power down protocols initiated. Across Veltrax, 3, one by one, the M1 Abrams units shut down. Turrets relaxed. Engines cooled. Cannon lights dimmed. Their silence was louder than their engines ever were. Yalin stood, her voice respectful now. Commander Hodge, Earth has demonstrated capability and will, but more importantly discipline. Matthew offered a slight bow. We aim to be good neighbors. Sarvik growled. You manipulated us. Matthew turned. His smile returned, but there was steel behind it now. No, Sarvik. We reminded you what happens when humans are underestimated. You call our machines primitive, but that's what makes them dangerous. You know exactly what they'll do when they wake up. So the only mystery left is when. Dralix muttered something in his native tongue. A translator droid attempted to render it, but choked on the profanity. Matthew walked toward the exit. Before leaving, he paused and turned to the council one final time. He wanted to know what humanity brings to the table. He glanced at Julian and Ellis, then back to the chamber. We bring history, pain, cunning, laughter. We bring steel forged in fear and hearts built for hope. But above all, we bring clarity. He stepped forward, hands in his pockets. When we come in peace, we smile. And when we come for war, he gave them all one last grin. We still smile. And with that, Earth's representatives exited the chamber. Above in orbit, the UHT Crescent Dagger opened its docking bay. The Abrams tanks, each linked via sub-AI tether, began their slow, thunderous crawl toward the planetary extraction zones. Their shadows stretched across Veltrax, 3 like the memory of something older than fear. Later, the Galactic news feeds would play the footage over and over. Humans entering a chamber alone, unarmed, and leaving with the votes of every major species in the galaxy. Not through blood, but through presence. The Ithkari would later write, "We've known many apex predators. The mistake was believing humans were one of them. They're not predators. They're storytellers who write peace in ink and war in fire." And the final image broadcast that day, seen across 1,000 stars, was simple. An M1 Abrams tank alone on a cliff facing the sunrise. Silent, motionless,